Woodworking is expensive. We all watch the big YouTube channels with their woodpecker tools, their Festool dominoes and their mitre saw alters, and it's easy to feel like you need the same setup, the same fancy tools just to get the same results. But you don't. And to hopefully help, I'm going to show you the tool mistakes that I've made over the years so you can hopefully avoid them. And I'll also show you what I use instead so you can save some time, money and frustration. Because some of these were quite expensive mistakes. Others are just poorly designed tools and some come down to personal preference. So if I weigh it up, you can make your choices. Let's start with probably the most expensive knee-jerk tool purchase I've made. These are my first regret. These are parallel clamps. But these are the smallest ones I bought. My big regret was buying these, the larger ones. I first saw parallel clamps very early in my woodworking journey, watching channels like Matt Estley. And I was very inexperienced, and the one thing I didn't take into account at the time was that his and my workshops were very different. And crucially, what we were building was also very different. I'll explain a bit more about that shortly. First, how big was my regret? You see, these aren't cheap. The small ones set me back £88 for a pair. These are the 600mm. But I also bought a medium pair for £106 for the pair. Add that to the 1500mm large ones at £150 a pair, and it's quite a regret. You see, buying two is expensive. But let's be honest, if these are the only large clamps you buy, two's never going to be enough. Fortunately, there is an alternative. But first, when and why are these appropriate? You see, on face value, they look like the pro-choice solution. They give you even clamping pressure, parallel jaws, and they come with an incredibly solid build. But along with all of that, they're big, they're heavy, they're awkward to handle, and to store them takes up a significant amount of space. For most of what I build, for smaller projects, these are just plain overkill. I mean, the longer ones barely ever get used. Now I admit, they do make sense if you're making large cabinets or lots of panel glue-ups, but even in that case, there are some much cheaper options. And as an aside, they do stand up nicely if you're doing a lot of glue-ups and you need to store them somewhere. I confess that is a nice perk. And in cases where parallel clamping pressure over a greater distance is vital, these are your go-to. But consider these options. If you're doing larger glue-ups, maybe look for Sash clamps or bar clamps. They are much cheaper, and I found these Sash clamps have actually been excellent for me. These ones at 900mm are around £50 a pair, but if you look really closely, you can find cheaper ones for around £30 a pair. I mean, that's a decent saving for two. Imagine how much the saving stacks up when you're buying 4, 6 or 8. Now for smaller work, where you'd think these would be fairly useful. I tend to find that the weight of these makes these the last ones I reach for, unless, as I said before, I need that long jaw parallel clamping, which is quite rare. In smaller jobs, I find these F-style clamps or these squeeze clamps absolutely perfect. They're high pressure, they're lightweight, and they're a good cost. And as an aside, you can store around 60 of these in the space it would take to store 2 of the longest parallel clamps. Every single build that I do uses these. And the squeeze clamps even come in a longer variety. If you're worried about keeping panels flat, and these are what you really think you need, just remember you can still save money, put your Sash clamps underneath and then just put an equal amount above to even out that pressure. Now, I'm not saying these are bad tools, because they definitely aren't. For a pro with a high budget in a large workshop making big projects, these might be ideal. But before you buy, ask yourself, what do I actually build? Or if you're just starting out, what will I end up building? How often will I genuinely use these? Because in my case, these were an expensive solution to a problem I only had once. Not too dissimilar to the next tool. These are roller guides, and a quick confession before we carry on. These roller guides themselves were actually sent to me free by a sponsor just as I was considering purchasing them for myself. So fortunately, I'm not out of pocket, because if you were to buy these exact ones from Banggood, you'd be set back around £240. If you buy the original from Jessam, over here in the UK, it would set you back £330. So they're not cheap. Very quickly, here's what they do. You mount them onto your table saw fence. Generally, you'd use them with larger sheet goods like plywood or MDF. You set them so that the roller sits on the wood itself, and as the wood is fed through the table saw, as the roller is angled, it pushes it towards the fence. Not only that, but they only move in one direction, forwards, so they stop the wood getting pushed backwards, hopefully preventing kickback. On paper, this sounds like the perfect solution, Better accuracy and added safety? Well, maybe. There's two cases here that we need to consider. Larger cabinet table saws or smaller job site table saws like mine. You see, on a cabinet saw, these may not feel like a regret, as the saw itself has a larger, wider fence and is much more suited to doing larger sheet good cuts anyway. A lot of people with smaller table saws will use a track saw to break the wood down first before taking it to the table saw, rendering these fairly redundant. And the reason they do that is on a smaller table saw like mine, these are a bit of a faff, to the extent that I had to make an auxiliary fence just to put these on to then attach to the fence of the table saw, because there wasn't enough surface area on the top of the original. And because of that, you can't just swing them out the way easily like you would with a larger table saw. So you're constantly removing them and then attaching them again. And on top of that, you have to keep resetting them for the different thicknesses of wood. And on narrower cuts, well, they actually get in the way of your push stick. But to be fair to them, build quality and function are good. They do actually work. But the setup time and the overall hassle completely kills the benefit of these with a smaller table saw. Here's what I would do instead if you have a smaller table saw. First of all, I would do what I've done. I would build it into a bench setup, because this will provide it with outfeed support as well as side support. I'd even add a little bit of infeed support if it's possible to do that. Where possible, I'd use featherboards to keep the wood tight to the fence. And I would always use the riving knife and the crown guard where possible. But more than anything, focus on technique. And the key to good technique is that it provides control. How you hold and move the wood and how you use your push stick matters more than any accessory. Buy or make some good push sticks that you are happy using. Ones that not only apply forward pressure but also downwards pressure. Make sure that that pressure is angled towards the fence to keep the wood tight to the fence. If you get all of that right, you're going to reduce the risk of kickback and you're going to increase your cut accuracy. I'm going to come back to all of this in a little bit more detail for another tool regret towards the end of the video. First, let's talk savings that weren't savings. In particular, this cheap dowel jig from Temu. And please note, this is nothing against dowel jigs in general. If you can't afford a Festool domino and you can't hide pocket holes, dowels may end up being the best way to align and strengthen a joint. But where all joints are made up of a minimum of 2 pieces of wood meeting, the very minimum I expect from one of these jigs is that the dowel holes you put in each piece of wood meet as well. Accuracy really does matter here. But so does function. And this fails on both. I cheaped out. It looks good, the price looked good. It fooled me. So now I have a completely useless tool. And the issues are fairly simple. It's poorly made, clunky to use. You can only use it on the end or the side of wood, not in the middle of a panel. As I said before, it isn't accurate enough to line up 2 dowels on 2 separate pieces of wood so they meet. It's basically sloppy and will at best frustrate you, but at worst it will ruin your work. The solution? I hate to say it, but buy a mid to upper range jig. And do some research before you buy it, make sure it can do all the jobs you want it to do. Many come with removable parts, so they can be placed on the middle of a panel, so you can put dowels right where you need them. Check that it's well made and accurate. And just know that this may end up costing you a decent chunk of money. And if the budget won't stretch to this, maybe find other ways to strengthen your joints. On certain joints you could do a through dowel and leave it as a feature. Or learn some hand-cut joinery if you're up for a bit of a challenge. If you can hide them, pocket holes might work. Or drive a screw through and plug the end up. Maybe glue on its own is actually strong enough, depending on what the joint's going to be used for. Now, let's go back to talking about clamping, but not these types of clamps. Let's talk about work holding clamps. More specifically, workbench work holding clamps. Now, if you didn't know, these silver covers on my workbench cover up a series of dog holes. They're either 20mm or 3/4 of an inch holes drilled directly into your worktop. And I would say that any workbench would benefit from having dog holes on it, either a lot or a few in the right places, especially when it comes to holding down your work for doing jobs like hand planing. Now, there are some brilliant work holding options out there, but these are not them. These are supposed to work in tandem with a simple bench dog, clamping your work in between. And there are 2 different styles, as you can see here, both using this screw mechanism to close the gap on your workpiece, therefore holding it tight. And they do look like clever solutions to a problem. But this one tightens needing a spanner, and the other one has this bar. Both of them are slow, and both of them are clumsy. Try doing it over and over again if you're working with lots of different pieces, and I promise you it will soon get old. And on top of that, the heads are made from metal, so they do pose a risk to tools like your hand plane. I've got a couple of better solutions. Let's start with the one that's going to cost you, and then I'll talk about a free one after. These are the option that will cost you. If you don't mind spending a bit of money, these cam action quick clamps are absolutely brilliant. They're adjustable, fast, and they're made of plastic and rubber, so they're kind on your tools too. Or if you're hand planing, I tend to use either a wooden or a 3D printed planing stop, which is fast and simple. Or just clamp a piece of wood across the corner of your workbench and butt whatever you're going to hand plane up against it. But if you need more hold, these are great. And now the free option. You see, the same work holding potential can be achieved by cutting just a couple of wedges and using a couple of bench dogs. I even whipped up another slightly more complicated option as an adjustable tool. Because work holding should be quick, easy and strong. And I regret these because, well, they aren't. This next one is more general advice rather than a specific tool itself, and it's taken me a few years to come around to it. You see, when it comes to accessories for tools like drills, drivers, routers, you can buy massive bit sets that cover every possible eventuality that may come up. And it may be a little bit controversial, but I'm going to say that these huge sets are not quite what you need. You need to hedge a little bit. What I'm saying is I wouldn't recommend buying the massive sets, nor would I recommend buying individual bits for every single one that you need. The happy middle ground is my recommendation. Take this 1/4 inch router bit set that I bought for my trim router. Although the casing has changed, I bought this over 4 years ago when I first bought my router. And out of the 24 bits, I've just counted, there are 14 that I have never used. When you're first starting out and you've just got your first router, the bits you're going to use the most are the straight bits, the flush trim bits, the chamfer bits, and the roundover bits. You might progress to a templating bit, but in the most part, there's 6, 8, maybe 10 that you will use the most. And if you buy a big set like I did, they're the ones that are going to wear out first and need replacing. And when that happens, like it did with my flush trimming bit, I upgraded to this nice spiral head flush trim bit for a little bit more money. And this is a great way of knowing that you're spending the decent money on the tools you're going to use the most. But it still doesn't account for the 14 unused bits in the set. Now I know we all have a set budget, but here's my advice. If you've got a choice and your budget will either buy you a massive set covering absolutely every eventuality under the sun, or a medium to small, very high quality set, I would say so long as the high quality set has the most used bits in it, like this Makita impact driver bit set, I'd go for that option. Because bad quality bits last minutes in your workshop, leaving you with regret and bitterness. Spending your money wisely on a small to medium decent set, rather than just buying individuals and then topping up individuals as and when they either wear out or you need them for that specific job, will get you better value for money and better tools and better results overall. Buy for your needs right now, not for what you may think you might need in the future. Or importantly, what you see other people using on YouTube videos. Now, let's finish with a big one, and one that's going to get the comments moving for sure. Plastic push sticks and paddles. These two were pretty much where I started. These were cheap, and this was free with the table saw. Next, I added this because I saw it in a video and I like the colour. It's basically the same style as this, but you've got a removable head and you can replace the foam if it goes into your table saw blade. But here's the issue and why I think you should spend time, if not money, making something that is much, much better. Push sticks first. These apply pressure to a very specific point on your workpiece. So right here, or right here. That's just one point, and that's just not enough. When using a table saw, there are 3 key areas that I believe you need to apply pressure to. The obvious one is forwards. The second one is towards the fence. And the third one is downwards. Towards the fence gets you that accuracy of cut and minimises kickback. And downwards is also there to minimise your kickback. And I know kickback can happen for many different reasons, but if you get the pressure going in the right direction, it really does cut the risk down. Because what it does is it minimises the risk of the board coming away from the fence, skewing, rising up onto the blade, and therefore getting kicked back at you. This style of push stick is great for moving your work forwards, but applying downward pressure and pressure into the fence is not quite as easy. Because if this part of the board starts to ride up or skews, the pressure at this end is doing nothing. So here's an example of the style that I like the best. And luckily, they're homemade and free. But as a caveat, find a style that you're comfortable with and make your own to that style. I like these because they're longer, and while keeping your hand away from the blade, you can exert downward pressure all the way along the piece. Now, which style of handle you go for determines how you can apply that pressure. You can very easily set them up so that they're angled towards the fence, and the heel makes it really easy to push your work along. Add in a little bit of cork or rubber on the bottom and you get that extra grip too. The starting position of your push stick is also key for getting that pressure really nicely towards the fence. I don't like to start off close to the fence, albeit it feels like your hand's safer because it's further from the blade. I've got a really handy line on my table saw to show where the blade is aligned to. I try and get the heel not too far away from that. I'm still well away from the blade itself with my hand, but it's very easy for me to keep that pressure going towards the fence through the cut. As for paddles, I never use these on my table saw. They are just too small. They were all right for my router table for a while, but honestly, after a bit, you lose the grip. And the plastic is really brittle. I don't want to see shards flying if it hits either a blade or a router bit. My advice, either spend out and buy a decent one with a decent surface area, very good grippy material, nice features. Or take a little bit of time and make your own. The best bit of advice I can give you if you are making your own. I did a lot of trial and error on this base material. For this or push sticks, this nitrile cork is excellent, and all you need is a bit of contact adhesive to glue it to the wood itself. I'll leave a link for where you can get it down in the description in case you want to make one of these for yourself. But as with any tool, make your own choices what you're going to use. If it doesn't feel safe, don't do it. Find a better way. And that's it. Remember, the best tools are the ones you're actually going to use and the ones that are going to keep you safe. Start simple and only upgrade when you need to. Avoid the shiny things, avoid the aspirational buying. I hope that everything that I've said in this video will save you a little bit of money, bit of time and a whole lot of frustration. If it's been of value, please take the time to click the like, and if you're offered, click the hype. That way more people get to see it. And in the comments, let me know what tools have frustrated you over the years. We all have them. As always, thank you so much for watching this far. Thank you to each and every one of my patrons for your continuing support. If you want to check it out for yourself, it's not just the paid members that get the videos, there's a free option as well. I'll leave a link with that and everything else down in the description. Any tools that you've seen in the video will be there too. If you click on Patreon or want to check out a couple of these videos, I'll see you over there. Thanks a lot for watching.